today we are covering everything from a comprehensive business insurance coverage. And we are joined by Jim Klingensmith, who is president of L. Calvin Jones, and Mertzi Komar, who's cyber risk manager at L. Calvin Jones. And L. Calvin Jones has been around for over 100 years, and that is really impressive. Jim, I guess just a real quick couple summaries of topics that we'll be talking about today.
Well, the primary topic, of course, is the cyber risk exposure, what goes on with that. And again, if anyone has questions regarding the other areas of business insurance, a couple of things we'd point out is just, yes, how critical it is to know who you're utilizing as an agent.
Sure.
You're buying contracts. The industry uses the terminology policy, but policy is a friendly use word. It's contracts you're purchasing, and there's many, many different areas of complication if you don't understand what you're getting into. For instance, just in the commercial liability arena, I've heard people say, we'll call that one neighborhood and we'll call property another neighborhood and auto another neighborhood. It's way beyond Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. That sounds too friendly. It's just the general liability policy alone. There's over 2,100 different forms and endorsements that can be added to a policy, just the general liability. So it's very in-depth. A lot of people hold themselves out as experts, specialists. I would challenge them on that because within the industry, there are specific professional designations that take a lot of time. You pay for it, but the critical ones also you have to annually update. The letters have to be after the name. If the letters aren't after somebody's name in the insurance industry, they're not the specialist that they want to claim they are. They're not the expert. It's being like the CPA of insurance. You're diving deep. These are contracts, and it's critical to know who you're dealing with, that they have those designations. We have 24 designations right now within L. Calvin Jones, and others are still working on additional designations. So that's a critical component. But the overall subject today was cyber risk, and then we can answer any other questions people have in dealing with the rest.
That's excellent. I know cyber risk, those are both very topical, but cyber risk and to get into business interruption insurance, we've all been interrupted, right? We've had to shelter in place here the last couple months. We're undergoing a reopening. So many considerations from how to protect your employees, how to protect your customers, how to protect your stakeholders, more broadly speaking. And what is the current state of how we can manage our risks? Because the risks, it was, fast and loose, I think, growth here for the past, since the financial crisis of 08-09. Now I feel like there's been a focus on resiliency and risk management again. And I'm sure it's probably something that's, that's your mindset all the time, right? How to be resilient, how to manage risks. And probably your clients are coming to you and saying, thank you. Thank you. You've been telling me this. And so I look forward to really digging into all these topics today.
Yeah. And so again, with business insurance, it's not just what they can get. Insurance just isn't a capture all. And that's why I get so concerned when people try to make it very simplistic. It's not. And I don't ever want people to think, oh, I have liability insurance, so I'm good. I have property insurance, so I can do whatever I want with my property. It's as simple as if we have our contents here in this building and without an endorsement, my buddy across the street in his office, I can't take anything I own here and put it over there and expect it to be covered unless I have an endorsement that allows for it to be moved. So there's a lot of intricacies. You can't simplify it. You have to have a professional that knows what they're doing to delve into it, because they explain to you what can be covered by an insurance policy, whether it be general liability, property, auto, what cannot be. But the most important part is without the knowledge, they can't go in and ask the right questions to accomplish the ultimate goal. You have to know not just what's going on in the insurance world. We talk to the business owner, get to know more about their operation, and then you can start building on a program. But I can't go to every electrician and just assume they all need the same coverage. There's certain things we'd look at, but I've got to know, we've got to know what else is going on within their business that they run that brings on new exposure that we have to take care of.
Right. Great points. Great points. So I think with that, Mercy, we were going to hand it to you.
We're going to talk about cyber this morning a little bit more in depth than we usually do, because it's becoming a big concern for these business owners now, because you've got to protect your data, you got to protect your equipment, you got to protect your reputation, and you've got to be more diligent about your bottom line, because let's face it, we got lots of problems going on out there. There are new cyber exposures that have evolved from the threat of personal data now to the theft of money or livelihood. When I started first writing cyber insurance, screen two, in 2015, we only covered 4 items. We could give you coverage for your media exposure, your website, your Zoom, things like that. We could give you privacy liability so that if someone would sue you because their information got loose, and we could give you restoration of your data, and we could give you coverage for fines. So if you were fined for a HIPAA violation, we could handle all that. The exposures have evolved. So now we're at the point where we've got about 15 different things we can cover under a cyber risk policy. It used to be that your kid living in the basement with his mother's house was breaking into things. That's not true anymore. Now you've got corporations set up in foreign countries that have boiler rooms. They've got HR departments, they've got payroll, and they will sit there with people, actually that looks like a call center, and they've got people trying to get into your system. And if they get into your system, then they will go ahead and they will bring up their supervisors, and they'll try and keep you online so that they can get in further and see what they can do. Everybody's got data nowadays. We know you have it. It's just, where is it? Okay. And I've always told people, you better secure your data before you insure your data. I don't want to be insuring it if you don't know where it is or what you're doing with it. You need to train your employees. You need to let them know what they should be doing. You have to hire qualified people to handle your internal IT. There are MSPs in this area that are absolutely wonderful, and there are some that are fairly mediocre. And you also need to know whether they're qualified or not. No, back a couple. Yeah. We're just trying to get our screens here in line too. We're going back to one more. Yeah, everybody's got data, but you need to know, where is your data? Okay, is it still in filing cabinets? It could still be. It could be on remote systems. It could be on desktops, but you have to know where it's at in order to cover it properly. The problem with COVID has been that everybody's decided that they need everyone to work remote, and that's wonderful. It's worked out for us here beautifully at the office. We now have 8 people that are working basically remote. They are working on our own computer systems, and that's important, because 90% of the policies I've looked at say, we aren't going to cover you for remote work unless you're on the corporate insured's equipment. So if I've got my own computer at home I'm working on, I might not be covered. So that's something that we really have to worry about. So if you've trained your employees properly and you've hired good MSPs to work there, you've also got to read the contracts, because what you're getting from third-party providers is a contract that says, we are not going to cover anything. It's not our responsibility. The cloud providers say they take no responsibility. So you have to look at all these contracts that you're working on and make sure you're getting what you think you're getting. We always suggest that you ask for a certificate of insurance. You want them to prove to you that they have, first of all, technology errors and omissions, and you want them to prove that they have cyber insurance. And I'll be very honest with you. I've talked to enough CPAs, attorneys, and insurance agents in this area to know that 50% don't have cyber insurance. When an insurance agent that I'm teaching comes up to me and says, I guess I should get that, huh? Yeah, I think you should. You know, you're trying to sell it and you don't have it, okay? So, and then that happens. It really, truly does.
So in industries where, say, attorney-client privilege is critical and proprietary information is almost a key currency, you're saying that these organizations don't have any type of protection?
A lot of them don't. A lot of them absolutely do not, and it's frightening. So you have the right to ask, especially like a CPA. I mean, absolutely, he's got all your financial information. Law firms are getting better because law firms have realized that they are now sending people to work out remote too, which is becoming very common. So yes, you need to ask people whether they have coverage. One of the big problems we need to talk about, of course, is the really big issue right now with cyber, and that's ransomware. This is an average demand now is up to $111,000, and the average length of downtime is 16 days. Now, if you're counting on an endorsement under a business owner's policy to give you coverage, you're going to find out you don't have any, because business interruption coverage is not covered under a data endorsement on a business owner's policy. The other thing that's important that you're going to get if you buy a standalone policy is a breach coach. And a breach coach is some corporation that the insurance company has set up to talk to you once you get the insurance coverage, to tell you how to maintain your systems and to work with your MSPs. And then if there is a breach, they step right in and send their experts in to help you determine, is it really there? Work with your MSPs, work with your internal people. And that's part of the new policies that are coming out today.
And so I'm sorry, Mercy, but your chain is as strong as the weakest link, correct? And
Absolutely.
So with everyone going remote, while you could have a great policy in place, literally those that adhere to the policy and compliance to the policy of every single employee that has a device that holds data or access to data, it's actually a scary, very scary proposition.
It's very scary. We've had a loss. We've had several losses from employees that are away from the office already that have opened phishing emails and have gotten the company into trouble. So yeah, it's very important that the employees are trained what not to do. Ransomware has become the #1 cause of cyber losses, and that's because of Bitcoin. That's the reality. I mean, gone are the days when you would tell somebody, give me $50,000 in small bills, put it in a brown paper bag and drop it in the garbage can at the corner of 5th and 3rd, okay? That was the old way. And they could track somebody. Well, Bitcoin is so much better, of course, because you can't track it. It's like dealing with a Swiss bank account. So it's a lot harder, and it's making the criminals a lot bolder. Plus the fact that they've got this new encryption where they can re-encrypt you in the future. So maybe I've gone and I've cleaned everything. I'm sitting fine, and all of a sudden 6 months down the road, it all pops up again. And that's this new encryption figure that they have. So what normally happens step by step is they'll get some phishing information out there. They'll get an employee to open up and let them into the system. And then they'll start spreading in the system, and they'll start looking for things that they can latch onto. And what normally happens is it's an employee, of course, and lots of times it's someone who's in a management role that has no technology knowledge whatsoever that's opening this up. And this worm will script through the system, and then the criminals will look in and see, okay, who do we have here? How much money do they make? What can we get our hands on? Do we want data or do we want money? And then they'll know what's at stake. And then what they're going to do is they will push right onto the screens a note that says, this is what's at stake. This is what we've got. This is how much we're going to demand from you. We want Bitcoin. This is when you're to give it to us, and we will give you the account number to send it to. Now, I'm not technologically any way, shape, and form good on computers or anything. People that know Bitcoin tell me that it takes at least 2 days, no matter what, in order to transfer Bitcoin. So you know you're going to be down for 2 days. Now, the FBI says don't pay. Don't pay the ransom. And because if you do, it's actually a criminal offense. But how do you not pay the ransom? Baltimore refuses to pay it. It was $76,000. By the time Baltimore was done, it cost them $18 million to get themselves put back together. So it just depends on what you and your breach coach decide, whether or not you can withstand a loss. Maybe you'll be down for a week, and maybe it's cheaper to take the week down, or maybe it's better to pay that ransom, get the encryption code, get back into business, and then shut the computers down and start all over again. So you're going to have to figure that out and negotiate how you're going to get that done. And then after the payment, you're going to be waiting. You've got to rebuild the system. And with refusal to pay comes rebuilding the whole system. Or maybe you say, okay, we'll pay it. And you pay it and you shut it down. But when you bring it up, the system is still damaged. So the insurance will also cover that. And it's getting pretty broad with all of these different kinds of losses. So you're going to respond to these people. You're going to have to shut your system down. You're going to bring forensics people in. You've got an attorney that's going to have to get involved if there's been any information loss. You're going to have public relations come in and try and spin what's happened. And you're going to have notification and credit monitoring. And all of this is going on in the background. Meanwhile, you're losing money. And this is where the business interruption section comes in. Business interruption, as far as we're concerned, is the least understood and the most undersold product in not only cyber insurance, but in all insurance. And this COVID pandemic has brought this out. People finally are realizing that there was such a thing. It's not going to cover the COVID, but there is such a thing available. And this is the top concern of most risk managers around the world. Everybody thinks they've got it, but do they, and do they have enough? And that's the issue. It's going to cover your business loss and extra expenses while you've got this computer network outage when it comes to cyber. And it's for your internal network. It's not going to be anything with your third party, but it's your internal network. And if the goal of a hacker is to take down the business, instead of stealing data, your business income is where you're going to have the biggest amount of loss. It's usually 10 times the cost of the ransom. We had a loss recently where a 20-person accounting firm lost $40,000 a day in business income and expenses. So it can get pretty nasty. And there's usually a waiting period. So they're going to make you wait 8 to 12 hours before they'll start paying. So it can get pretty expensive. Then you've got afterwards, you've got reputational harm. If you're a big important company, you will not know until a good year after this is all over how much customers, how much business you've actually lost. And the insurance companies will also step in usually and cover the reputational harm. So right now I've got 70 insurance companies. They're offering 70 different policies. There's 70 formats, 70 layouts, and 70 wordings. And I have to sit there and I have to analyze them and know how to read them. And that's what I've learned to do. In fact, I'm to the point now where I'm teaching other insurance agents how to do it because the applications are getting complicated. And the applications are warranties, and you don't want to lie and you don't want to make a misstatement or it'll void the policy. So how do you buy cyber insurance? First of all, the policies are confusing. Many of the agents aren't understanding what they sell. You need to get a qualified agent. Jim mentioned earlier, you've got to have an agent that understands what these policies say. You always want to purchase a standalone policy, not an endorsement onto a business policy. And they're going to be more costly, but they're going to be better policies and with a lot less exclusions. So I'm sure you got some questions there.
I just wanted to add on to that when she was talking about the business interruption part of it and the losses that could occur. Heard a few stories. One was a large manufacturing company. got hacked, asked to pay $350,000 in ransom, refused to pay it. The hacker, a lot of people don't think about this, but a lot of industry today is all computerized out in the plant, all the machinery. So, and they had multiple plants across the country. They refused to pay. They were going to fix it on their own. They shut down the equipment. They were months before they were back up. They were almost 20 million in loss by the time it was done. So it's not as simplified as people think. And again, mercy, the most important part of this, again, is always remember how many different policies, wordings, you're getting back to contracts. She's got the letters after her name. She teaches throughout the state to multiple agencies. It's critical stuff. And you really have to know because you can get hurt. And not just from cyber. This is dealing with all forms of insurance, with the auto, the property, the liability, and on, directors, officers, pollution, professional. You're always dealing with contracts and multiple wordings. And I think the most critical thing, Jeff, I like to have people understand, and it's hard for a lot of people to wrap their head around this, okay? All that's required by the state, any state, is that you get licensed. It's right. Typically, you can self-study. If you went to the class, you're talking about 40 hours of class time. You take the test, you're an agent. Now, the reality is insurance companies don't care how much an agent knows. If you became an agent next week, Jeff, and I've been doing it for 30 plus years, you get paid the same as I get paid from the insurance company. They don't recognize anything we bring to the table. So why do we spend all this extra time and effort and money in keeping our people trained and on the cutting edge? It's our loyalty back to the clients that rely on us. It's making sure that insurance actually does work.
Right.
And that's the most critical thing. The insurance companies don't care. In fact, they actually pay less claims out having agents represent them that don't know how to put all the things in, because there's a lot of add-ons that we can do with endorsements to policies that don't cost a dime. If you don't know how to ask for it, you don't get it. Correct. The underwriters don't hold the insurance agent's hands and tell them, oh, you forgot to ask me for this, or you forgot to ask me for that. They would then take on the professional liability exposure.
So what you're saying is anyone can get a driver's license, right? If you're 16 and you pass a simple test,
yep.
But to go hang on the Daytona 500, you need intense skill and years and training and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and years of looking at all the data points and all the contracts.
Yes.
and to really make that happen. And we do have a question here. Cybercrime, it's something that it's someone's virtually padlocking your company. Like you are seized up because your computers, any systems, any electronic systems can be effectively seized and halted, and you literally cannot reopen it. Like they're locking you up from the outside and will only release once you pay.
Right. And people say, well, how do you know that they'll do that? Well, believe it or not, even though that's criminal act, they still have their integrity. Scruples, I guess, their integrity, because they know if they wouldn't, then that business is shot already. So you pay, they unlock it. You don't pay, it can lead to way more than anybody imagined. And I've heard people tell me with their in-house techie people too, saying, oh no, we've got this and we've got that in place. These hackers know what they're doing. So when I hear people say, well, we back up daily, we do this and that, they could plant the seed today to decide they're going to get you next year. See, now that backup, they're inside your backup way back, and they can do way more harm than people realize.
Right. They iterate and iterate and iterate, and they spend literally, from countries outside of the U.S. just hammering on the systems. That's all they do all day, every day, and they have spiders to scale this out. And so the fact that the risk is there and it's very great, and you got to have yourself covered. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Surprised they don't know even who they're going after. From what I understand, they just send out their little spiders, and once they get in, then they find out who are you and how much money do you have. And then once they get in too, it's very hard to explain to an insured that they're coming back. Once they've got in, they know they can get in again, and they're going to be back, or they're going to try.
Right. Wow. It's actually very scary. It's not, and it's not a matter of if, it's really a matter of when.
Yes, that's all it is, Jeff. I went to a seminar put on by Morgan Stanley about 1.5 years ago, and the lady that presented worked for the NSA, heading up the international terrorism attack via cyber. And she started off by telling us, if I told you even half of what I know, you'd never sleep again. And she said, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And she said, you know, people have to stop and realize that if they're getting into the biggest corporations of, you know, the 500s, the US government itself, the federal government, everything, you certainly are going to be the easiest ones. And that's what they're looking at. These smaller businesses, the doctor's offices, trying to get people's financial information. The one piece of advice I'll say real quickly is what she put out to everybody is just the simplest thing you can do, especially now that the law has changed, and to freeze your credit costs nothing, and to unfreeze it now costs nothing. She told everybody in that meeting that night, immediately freeze your credit. Go to all three, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. You set up an account, costs nothing, you enter, and you freeze them up. And it's so simple. I've done it. You go to buy a car or anything else, you ask them, which one are you going to look at? You call, you unfreeze it, it automatically freezes back up in 24 hours. She said, that's the best advice I can ever give any of you for your personal protection, that nobody can go open and spend money in your name. Outside of that, if they get your charge card, you usually have protection from the charge card company.
Right.
So that's my little tidbit there.
Good. Yeah, great tip, actually. Very good.
Mercy, I have a question. So when someone's evaluating their cyber liability, what's usually the process when they're trying to get on a new policy? I mean, how do they get evaluated, and how do you decide what's the right insurance for them for their needs?
It does take some time to sit and talk with the client, first of all, and I take the regular application with me and ask the usual security questions. What kind of backups do you use, things like that. But you still have to know what their perils are that they're really interested in. Jim's got a manufacturing company we sat down with, and in the end they said, we're not worried about them getting into our bank account. We've got that under control. All of the crime issues we're okay with. The only thing we're really worried about is the business interruption and the ransom. And that's, you know, you have to sit down and determine that. We have other people who are primarily worried about the crime section of it, saying, I don't want anybody to be able to do invoices. I worry about that. I worry about them getting into the computers and getting into our banking system. So you have to figure out what's their biggest peril, what are they worrying about, what's going to keep them awake at night. And that's what you basically have to aim for. And you also have to figure, it also depends on what kind of an industry. We deal normally with about 5 of these 70 companies. One of them likes health providers. One of them is a generalist. One of them likes car dealerships. So you have to kind of pick different ones, and they'll give us also a list of questions that they want answered in order to help figure out what to provide.
Yeah, and oftentimes, Mercy will have to get involved with whether or not they have the in-house IT person. And a lot of smaller companies, including ourselves, we utilize an outside IT firm. We get them involved because they can tell us more of the intricacies of what's going on. The idea with everything insurance, whether it's property liability or anything else, it goes back to understanding how to build the resume, if you will, to the underwriters at the insurance companies, so they get a better comfort level. And the better the comfort level gets, and things that you can easily put in place to risk manage here and there, the better the price gets. They're more than willing to offer.
So this process really teases out all of the intricacies, and allows, you know, all the questions to ask, you know how to draw out all the information. So then when submitting for underwriting, you're not, you can get, I'll just say, favorable premiums or
favorable companies looking at it and giving us their feedback too. This is what we think they should do if they want us to write the policy. Here's our offer, and these are the things we want to see. Okay, and then we'll give them the policy. So yeah, it gets down to negotiations a lot.
Right.
Jeff, another important thing, it's funny how people view L. Calvin Jones. We've been around forever. We're a decent sized firm. We're also part of Keystone Insurers Group. And the interesting thing about this, when people are looking to call an agent, for some reason, they kind of compare us like maybe a law firm. If we're a little small guy, oh, well, that won't cost me as much as if I went with this big guy. You know, they've got all this. And the insurance companies pay across the board the same to everybody. Everybody gets the same commission. Doesn't matter. They don't care how much you know. What we gain just from our years of experience, they underwrite the agency as well. They base a lot of what they do based on our knowledge, our expertise in helping the risk managed clients. That all factors in. Outside of just take it cut and dry, here's our pricing. They pay us the same as they pay Joe Schmo who's sitting by himself in an agency. We get paid the same. It's how much more we do with it. We look to retain and have long-term customers. That's why we do as much as we do. It doesn't cost a dime more to call L. Calvin Jones and get all the expertise. And being part of Keystone Insurers Group, which has been around for quite a while as well, we have locations, partners, 300 different offices. We're ranked number 3 in the country right now with about $4 billion in volume amongst us. So we have major buying power. They look at us as far as what we bring to the table for risk management, the expertise is in different fields. All these things factor in. You know, every insurance company has filed rates that they have to file with the Department of Insurance in the state they're in. But after that, they have credits they can apply based on different comfort levels. From the underwriting side of what we bring to the table to give them the comfort level, then looking at us and knowing that we're going to be involved in helping that client if they're lacking in a couple things here or there. They know we're going to step it up for that client. We want to help control the client's costs. That's the ultimate goal.
Right, right. And it is truly a matchmaking process where, just like you said, from a vertical expertise standpoint, some underwriters, some insurance companies have a preference for certain industries.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And better conditions suitable. And so 100 years, some odd years in the business and the depth of the certifications you have and the time and intensity you spend in working with that information allows you to really span the horizon and do that best match.
Yes, there's a lot of companies out there that say, yeah, we write contractors. Well, we know certain coverages we need for contractors that over half of them don't even offer. But others are out there using them daily around the valley. We see it all the time. I'm looking at one right now. I just got a referral, and it's amazing what I look at and see. So here's a guy out there in the field doing all kinds of work for different companies, working with different subcontractors, other contractors. It excludes everything. It excludes everything. People just see, I've got liability. It goes back to that simple thing. I've got general liability. I'm covered. Everything's excluded. It's amazing how much. We had a client that we lost a couple of years ago. They thought, okay, this sounds good. This price over here looks really good. We asked a little bit more about it. We found out what company they were moving their insurance to. And it's like, they wouldn't do this if they knew what you were doing. We're certain of that. Well, they said, but they came out and inspected our property and everything. Yeah, they were inspecting the property. A few years passed by and we get a call back. Well, I guess I learned the lesson. We turned in a claim and they pointed out in the policy, knowing exactly what we do. Oh, here's the exclusion. We don't cover that. All they sold them was a general liability policy just for the basic, I slipped and fell on my way in, but not for what I'm doing when I'm there. And this happens all the time. And it's what frustrates me with the industry. Again, you're buying contracts. There's a reason there's well over 1,000 property casualty insurance companies out there. They're all offering their own contracts. And even though there's this entity called Insurance Services Office that writes the standard of the language for all the different policies, and they write all the endorsements and forms, carriers can then still take some of that. They have to give credit and then some manuscript of their own and do a lot of other things. There's just nothing cut and dry.
Right.
So,
I've never, Jim, heard that notion of you're buying a contract. I've never heard it put that way, but everyone, at least most people I know, hate reading contracts and hate reading fine print and hate going through the pages and pages of disclaimers and therefores and who-to-fors and all of those things. And so you see these contracts every day, you know where to look, and you're saving a lot of effort and energy.
And they are contracts. They're written by lawyers. Insurance companies are run by lawyers. They're contracts, and they know what they're putting in and they know what they're saying. And you may look at it and see one thing, and it may be totally different from what you think it is.
Right. Perfect example is even with the whole situation with COVID and business interruption. All the language is there that they don't want to cover it. And then you'll get attorneys who will say, oh, we're going to try to rethink what this word means and rethink what that word means. But then there's still another word that overrides what they said. And it's a criticalness of and, or, the. There's so many, it's contract. And until business owners understand that, it isn't so cut and dry. It's
Right.
not about the price. And what I try to let people understand, Jeff, I talked about earlier, interview the agencies, find out who really knows what they're doing. And if they don't have the letters after their name, they don't have professional designations, I'm willing to bet they don't know what they're doing. But they hold themselves out as specialists. But you interview and you find a quality agency, and then you put it in their lap. See, if you're just getting 3 and 4 and 5 agencies, say, go out and find me the best price. Compared to, you interview them all and let's say they hire L. Calvin Jones. We hire you, you ask us what you need to know. We'll cooperate, we'll give you everything, you'll know everything about this business. You build our insurance program. The difference of the two is if you just challenge everybody to bring the lowest price and you tell them, here's what I want you to do. Here's what I decide you need to cover. Go get me the best price. They're going to eat all the losses that they didn't know weren't covered. If they hire quality agency to go out and purchase on their behalf, and if we miss something now, guess whose lap it falls in? There's a huge difference.
Right.
Just going out and telling 3 or 4 and 5 agencies, just go find me a low price and get me something. And like this one client found out when they jumped to ship for a lower price, a large firm, local, nobody wanted to take the time to point out right here in this contract, we're actually excluding exactly what you do.
Right.
So it was only 2 reasons. It was either deception or no knowledge. And I typically like to think more positive, which isn't the best anyway, but no knowledge. They didn't know how to look at the contracts.
Right. You don't know what you don't know. Have you seen any big claims filed as a result of COVID-19 and the shutdown?
As of COVID-19, all of the claims that are being turned in, and they've asked insurance agents to go ahead and turn the claims in, even though they are denying every one. The idea being that should the government come forward then and say, look, we want to make sure everybody gets something, and we ask the insurance companies to handle it and we'll reimburse them. They want you to already have a claim number and have something in with the insurance companies. Because maybe later on down the road, that could be 2 years from now. And if you haven't turned in a claim now, the insurance companies might come back and say, well, you should have turned in a claim during the policy year.
And so, and this happens not just with this scenario, but all claims. The agent doesn't have the right, even like if it's a nationwide State Farm and they're almost employed directly, they don't have the right to say yay or nay on a claim. You have to turn it into the carrier. Contractually, they have the right to that. If I don't like the outcome, and we've got clients that are very happy. I had a client that I actually was out of town. They called direct in and the claim was denied by the carrier 3 times. A week later, I had the claim covered. Our job is to know the contracts better than their adjusters.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I did. I took what they were calling a non-covered claim, calling it flood, and I got it covered. That's our job. But I hear all the time the nightmares. You go in and talk to somebody, well, I had this claim. Well, it actually wasn't paid. The agent told me it wasn't covered. The agent doesn't have the authority to make that call. It has to be made by the insurance company. But that said, when you get back to COVID and the business interruption, really looking at the contract for what it is. And I always tell people, be careful what you wish for, because for them to get anything, for the government to try to force the hand of the insurance companies, means they're going to undo a contract that was already agreed upon, which is unconstitutional. You're retroactively changing a contract that was agreed upon. Remember, these are contracts. So they would do that. Now, let's just say, Jeff, that they won their case. The government just forces and undoes a contract, unconstitutional. If we just, and this has already been actuarially figured out by the American Property Casualty Association, if they just took all the employers with 100 employees and less and attempted to pay out the business interruption coverage, the cost would be approximately $431 billion a month. $431 billion a month. Now, to put that in perspective, insurance carriers have to carry what they call reserves. The total for home, auto, business, every insurance company in the United States that does home, auto, and business insurance, the total reserves are about $800 billion. So in less than 2 months of payout, you wiped out every insurance company. So then what happens? Every business, every homeowner, auto, you're all self-insuring because you wiped out the industry.
Wow.
It's kind of like when 9/11 hit, they learned more things about terrorism, another exposure. And now we have this thing where every buyer of insurance has to be offered the opportunity to buy or decline terrorism coverage. So what will happen is you live and learn from this stuff. So going forward, utilizing that same mechanism and saying, well, we'll do a joint partnership, kind of like flood or terrorism, and the insurance companies collect the money, but then the government is really funding it overall. The government gets those funds and they back it because it's going to be much higher than what's being collected. It's still going to be way more if you had another one of these scenarios. Remember, this is a national. Terrorism hit New York City. Floods hit a certain area. Business income is across the U.S. if you're going to do it that way. The dollars, it's not going to be affordable. Nobody's going to want to pay it. Let's put it this way.
Right.
Again, I couldn't begin to tell you how many contractors decline paying for pollution coverage, even though they know they have exposure, because they don't want to pay whatever it could be, from a minimum premium for a small guy of $2,500 up. It kills them because I think I'm being careful enough. And I always have to remind them, everything with insurance and the contract you buy has nothing to do with how careful you are. Anybody can still bring suit for suspicion of. And now you at least pick up your defense. If it's covered in the policy, you pick up the defense for that.
Wow. So we actually have one more question. In so many cases, you have small businesses that get started. Say it's 3 people, 3 laptops, and perhaps an office they rent or not. Maybe they're all virtual. At what level of company does a business have to think about getting business insurance? Is there a certain size they have to reach, or if you're billing someone, you need business insurance?
If you have filed with the state of Ohio to run a business, you need business insurance. Because they can come after you immediately. Someone knows that you exist, and you have to have business insurance. If you're a really small company, it's not that expensive, to be very honest with you. Most carriers are offering a minimum premium of $500 a year, so that would be for someone who's just decided to open a little bakery out of their house. Maybe they're going to make baked goods from their home. So it isn't as expensive sometimes as people think it is, but you should start one right away.
Okay, and so that's interesting. Say someone does want to make some money and they set up an LLC and they're selling baked goods out of their kitchen. Someone out there could just, like, the suspicion of, you
poisoned me.
Well, yeah. And again, on that policy, if you use the example of the bakery, now we have to do another endorsement on there, or use a carrier that's going to give us the coverage in case the food was contaminated and somebody got sick or claimed to get sick. See, if you don't have the coverage, you don't get the defense.
I see. Okay.
So again, making sure we put together the right contract. But there's so many things. It's a shame because small business, we're always chasing the clock, but I would love to be able to help guide small business people that are just starting and wondering, what do I do? The cost is going to be one of their lowest costs when they start out. It's going to give them the most important things they need, covering what little equipment they might have, the laptops, everything, and give them the general liability coverage. And again, you're at a minimum premium. It's a nominal charge. Everybody has exposure. Remember, anybody can sue you for what they suspect you may have caused bodily injury or property damage, for sure, the very, very basics.
Right. So, wow. Well, this has been really educational. I mean, the new themes of 2020 are resilience and risk management. It's always been important. It's always been important to be resilient. It's always been important to manage risks. But it's been we've been like slammed to the ground and beaten up with, the new environment we live in, and this is not changing anytime soon. I mean, the volatility in our markets and the way we operate, the way we do business is fundamentally changed forever. And so that all business owners really should consider how they're operating and how they're covered.
Yeah, all that came to light with this scenario with COVID is it showed people this one piece of a contract, that the wording's there that says it's not covered. They want to say, oh, but over here, civil authority, but you have to look at civil authority. There's been nowhere where the government has shut down within a mile radius of any business. Everybody could still go in and out of their buildings. A business owner could walk in. There's so many different parts of the language that don't allow for it. But this goes back to, again, everybody's saying, this is terrible, the insurance companies are covering this. Nobody's going to do something the contract doesn't make them have to do. A contractor's not going to add another room on when he was building your house because the contract didn't include that. You would have had to, endorse that contract to have him add that other room, and for a price.
Right.
The people, this is just, I hope, an eye-opener for people to understand, business owners, and homeowners. It's not as simple as they want it to be, that it's just, I've got a homeowner's policy, I'm covered. I've got a business policy, I'm covered. All the intricacies of contracts, and there's literally, just like I mentioned earlier, just in the general liability alone, over 2,100 different forms and endorsements to add to that one policy. So there's literally thousands and thousands of ways to put together one general liability policy.
Right. Wow. Whew. Gives you a lot to think about. Well, I'm glad you guys have been doing this 100 years.
And I don't know, I hope.
Yeah. So that's good. I think, could you provide some contact information? What's the best way to get a hold of L. Calvin Jones and Jim, Mercy, Brian?
The easiest way, and we follow up with it as well, but our direct line is 330-533-1195. Again, it's 330-533-1195, and we have our website at www.lcalvinjones.com.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, this has been eye-opening, educational, a little scary at times, but I'm glad you're out there to really help all the businesses navigate through this process.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate your time. Tony, I'll hand it off to you to close us out.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you to the team at L. Calvin Jones. And again, like Jeff said, it was definitely eye-opening. So whenever you have an insurance policy or you're looking for new insurance, make sure you talk to an expert and make sure that you're covered. I mean, that's the greatest advice you could ever have, because before it's too late, you want to make sure. And
that's it, Tony. I hate the thought of people spending money year after year, and they like to brag, I've never had a claim, I've never turned a claim in, and the one time they need to is that gap because the insurance agent never asked the right question and gave them the right thing. And I hate that should have, could have, would have been if my agent would have done the job. And I've actually heard clients even blame themselves. Well, maybe I should have. You don't know. If I walk into a doctor and I just sit there, if he doesn't ask me questions, he's not going to find out what's wrong with me. And I don't know what he needs to know to figure it out. It's the agent's job to dive deep, to know the insurance side of it, and ask questions of the business owner to understand their particular business.
Yeah, I will never pretend like I know insurance. So that I leave that to the professionals.
But here's the thing we hear most often. They don't have the claims or the simple things were covered. And so when you talk to people about doing a review for them and looking to see if we can improve, the typical is, no, thank you, I'm happy. Or I know my guy, he's a nice guy. Well, that's all good. They could be your best friend. It could be my own brother. But if my brother isn't specializing in insurance, he's just an agent, and he doesn't have the markets or the knowledge, then I'm only as good as, he had all the best intent to help me if that were the case. And my best friend would have all the best intent to help me. But if they don't, they only know what they know. They don't know what they don't know.
Right.
And that's the scary part of when people go out to deal with an agent to buy insurance. So we've committed from back when I started with L. Calvin Jones in '88, and I took my license, test passed, and I went back to the agent and said, you're ready to sell insurance. And I'm like, this is crazy. I'm not ready. And that's when I wanted to dive deep and became a certified insurance counselor, then a certified workers' compensation advisor. Why in Ohio? It's a monopolistic state, because I have a lot of clients who go out of state and I wanted to really help them. That's what we're about. We all specialize. You can't be the jack of all trades in this industry either.
Right.
Nobody can tell me they can sell commercial insurance, life health over here, do a little investment over. You can't do it. So that's the most important message you leave with people. A specialist in the insurance industry is going to have the letters after his name. They're going to have professional designations, and they're going to be committed to doing the best they can in our industry.
Great. And yeah, and I'm sure businesses will really appreciate those letters when it comes time to it. So
believe me.
Right.
The attorneys in town call us for advice, because I've even had attorneys tell me, we don't understand this stuff. We're not used to looking at these contracts. It's all jargon to us. So they call us to lead the way.
Right.
Good.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you guys very much.
Yeah, thank you. This has been amazing. For everyone joining us today, thank you for your time and attention. We greatly appreciate the team at L. Calvin Jones. Like I said, visit them on the website. Thank you for the Zoom audience. Thank you for the Facebook Live audience. This webinar will be rebroadcast or recorded. It has been recorded, and it will be available on businessjournaldaily.com in its entirety. And then we also will be providing vignettes of there's a long list of great key vignettes here that we're going to be sharing out as well. So So thank you all for joining us today, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day.